They never saw this coming. They told you to keep quiet for years. They told you to submit, to wait your turn. But what happened? History was made. As you kept silent, they underestimated you, closed their eyes, turned their backs. But now the stage is yours. You haven't forgotten like they think. You won't forget. The fire inside you was not born from ashes. It will never go out. They thought they could stop you, but they miscalculated. Now fear is in their eyes. Hesitation is in their steps. You set the rules, you manage the game. Write 77 in the comments. This is not a return. This is a revolution. They see it now. The ones who doubted, the ones who dismissed, the ones who mistook your silence for surrender. They believed time would erode your fire, that you'd grow weary, that you'd learn to let things slide. But they never understood. Your memory is sharp, not as a weapon of vengeance, but as a map of wisdom. Every deception, every false smile, every carefully planted thorn. You catalog them not to strike back, but to rise wiser, untouchable, beyond the reach of those who once sought to bring you down. You stood still while they danced in illusion, convinced they had won. You let them revel in their illusions, let them whisper among themselves, let them craft their false narratives. But tides do not ask permission before they turn. They assumed your patience meant weakness, that your quiet meant absence. Now, as the balance shifts, they grasp at explanations, searching for reasons, but there are none. Only the undeniable truth that the moment they counted you out was the moment they sealed their fate. Where others stumble, you step forward with certainty. They built walls to block your path, only to watch them crumble without a touch. They designed endings for you, but you were never part of their script. It isn't luck. It isn't mere persistence. It is something deeper, something untouchable, something woven into your very being. They watch, unsettled, as you rise where they swore you would fall. They call it coincidence, but you know better. What shields you is unseen, untouchable, immune to their grasping hands. They gather, they scheme, convinced that if they push harder, you will break. But they cannot shatter what was never in their hands to begin with. They measure strength in numbers, in noise, in force, but yours does not exist on their scale. They strike, but the impact recoils. They dig, only to be swallowed by the void they created. They speak, hoping to reshape reality with words alone. But truth does not bend to shallow voices. They do not understand why you do not flinch, why the storms they unleash never reach you. You do not belong to their world of fleeting victories and brittle power. Their rules do not apply to you. Their expectations do not bind you. What they build is temporary. What they fear in you is eternal. They look for the source of your strength, thinking they can replicate it, steal it, turn it to their advantage. But it is not something that can be bartered, borrowed, or faked. It does not belong to those who move in uncertainty, to those whose courage wavers. It is yours, written into your very essence, older than their doubt, stronger than their disbelief. No permission is needed, no validation required. You do what you were always meant to do. Move forward. And as you rise, unyielding, untouched, unstoppable, they finally see it. This was never theirs to decide. Every wound you carried, every challenge meant to break you, became the very foundation of your rise. Others discard the past like forgotten echoes. You carve it into the steel of your will. They mistook your trials for defeat, but you turned them into the very thing that makes you indestructible. They misjudged the fire within, assuming that time would turn it to ash. But endurance does not fade. It fortifies. The past is not a weight, but a foundation, and every experience is a stone laid in the citadel of wisdom. They mistook stillness for forgetfulness, failing to grasp that memory is not a chain. It is a shield, a compass, a force that does not wither under scrutiny. The echoes of yesterday do not haunt, they instruct, and in that knowledge lies power they never foresaw. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but the souls of many through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's grand design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Act now. Share your blessings to glorify His kingdom, for you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. They twist the past in vain attempts to erase their fingerprints from the wounds they inflicted, but truth is not so easily rewritten. The past is not a ghost to be banished, but a fire that exposes all things. Every attempt to diminish what was endured only serves to magnify the strength that rose from it. The lies that once held sway dissolve in the face of unshakable clarity, and those who once dictated the narrative now find themselves swallowed by their own fiction. Where others hesitate, this path is walked with certainty. While they scatter in confusion, seeking shelter from the consequences of their own making, there is no need to run, no need to hide. There is no fear in the face of illusions, for nothing built on falsehood can stand against the weight of truth. The past does not hinder, it illuminates, offering a map to destinations they cannot reach, a vantage point they cannot fathom. No disguise is impenetrable, no performance flawless. Behind polished words and orchestrated facades, there are cracks, subtle, telling, unmistakable. The art of deception is delicate, but observation is precise. What is hidden from the world is not hidden from the watchful. Every unspoken intention, every carefully veiled misstep is noted, not as a burden, but as a strategy. The game they thought they controlled was lost before they even realized they were playing. They mistake stillness for absence, silence for submission. But silence is not surrender. It is a force of nature waiting for the right moment to break the ground beneath their feet. They thrive in the shadows of disorder, thinking their moves cannot be traced, but order has a way of reclaiming its space. They pull the strings, unaware that they are entangling themselves. By the time they recognize the shift, it is already beyond their grasp. Restraint is not a weakness, it is precision. There is no need for haste, no need for spectacle. What is meant to collapse will do so under its own weight. The strongest force is the one that requires no announcement, no warning. Presence alone is enough. They fear what cannot be anticipated, what cannot be manipulated. And when the moment arrives, there is no need for words. Reality itself is the reckoning they never prepared for. They can flee, they can scheme, but the path they walk has already been mapped. They do not move undetected, and their choices are not without consequence. What was meant for destruction has been reforged, not as a remnant of suffering, but as a weapon against all who underestimated its endurance. No part of the past was wasted. It was transformed, purified, sharpened. The fire meant to consume only refined what could never be undone. They assumed that breaking would be inevitable. Instead, the pressure became the catalyst for transformation. Every challenge, every hardship was not an end, but a beginning. Strength was not granted. It was earned, forged through the very trials meant to extinguish it. The attempt to suppress only amplified. The attempt to diminish only made undeniable. Now their failure stares back at them, unshaken, unyielding, unstoppable. Nothing imposed could weaken what was built in defiance of limitation. They thought control was within their reach, that influence could shape destiny. But nothing external holds sway over what has become untouchable. The force that rises now is not a product of their expectations, but of something beyond them. No longer confined by their perceptions, no longer bound by their rules, it is a presence that shifts the very air, altering the course they thought was theirs to dictate. Like a river that has broken free from its banks, unstoppable and wild, there is no forcing it back into the narrow stream it once occupied. It carves its own way, reshaping the land, creating new paths where none existed before. That is what has happened here. The ones who thought they could dam the flow, who believed they could dictate the course, now stand in the presence of something beyond their control. Like the first crack of dawn breaking through the night, unstoppable and sure. The light has come, and there is no pushing it back. Darkness can fight it, try to linger a little longer, but when the sun rises, there is no debate, no argument, no negotiation. It simply is. And those who have spent their days thriving in the shadows, moving in secrecy, believing they could keep the world dimmed to their liking, now stand exposed. They do not need to be told. They feel it. A shift, a turning of the tide, a force moving that they can neither name nor ignore. It is undeniable, uncontainable. They spent years crafting a game, a system, a world in which they held the upper hand. They set the rules, controlled the board, moved the pieces as they pleased. But now, those rules do not hold, the game does not obey, and the pieces move beyond their grasp. The house they built, brick by brick, is crumbling. Not by any hand, but by the sheer force of truth, making its way through. The foundation was never as solid as they thought. They stacked their victories like stones, never realizing they were building a tower too tall, too fragile. And now, with one undeniable shift, the whole thing leans, creaks, and begins to fall. Like a tree standing tall in the storm, its roots tested by the wind, some remain unshaken, while others are uprooted, carried away like dry leaves in a whirlwind. That's what's happening now. The storm has come, the wind has spoken, and the ones who thought they were planted firm are realizing they were never as strong as they claimed. Their voices used to boom with confidence, their presence used to command the room. But now, the weight of truth presses in, and their foundation is shaking. They move differently now. The confidence that once coated their words has thinned. The steps that once landed with certainty now hesitate. They used to speak with authority, used to dictate how things would go, who would rise, who would fall. But authority does not rest in hands that tremble, and they tremble now. They try to walk the same path, but it does not respond to them as it once did. The doors that used to swing open at their command now remain shut. The people who once hung on their every word now watch with questioning eyes. The system they controlled no longer bends to their will. It is as if the very ground beneath them knows. Something has shifted, something irreversible, something divine. They cast glances over their shoulders, sensing the shift even before they understand it. It's an unsettling thing to realize the ground is no longer solid beneath your feet, to recognize that the very force you thought was under your control has slipped from your grasp. They spent years playing the game, making the rules, pulling the strings. But now, the strings are tangled, the rules rewritten, and the game refuses to be played by their hand. Like a lamp that once burned bright but now flickers in the wind, struggling against the inevitable. Their light is fading. The oil is running low, the flame weakens, and no matter how desperately they try to reignite what once was, the glow will not return. They spent so long believing they were the source of illumination, the ones who set the course, who decided where the light would shine. But now they stand in the dimming, watching as something greater moves beyond their reach, untouchable, unyielding, unstoppable. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be upon you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the temporal concerns of the world. As the Bible says, whatever is done in faith will return to God in abundant blessing. Luke 6:38. Like that great oak tree, our roots are deeply rooted in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stand we take, is secured by His strength. And now, you are being offered the opportunity to be part of that blessing. When you use the Super Thank You button and donate $100, this movement will return to you 100-fold in abundance. Their voices waver, their movements lack the certainty they once carried like a badge. They used to call the shots, but now they look around, waiting for direction. Their plans fall apart, like sand slipping through their fingers. What once was effortless is now exhausting. They push, but the doors do not open. They demand, but the world does not answer. The very energy they use to manipulate now moves without them, beyond them, outside of their reach. It is as if the very air around them has changed. The room no longer shifts to accommodate their presence. The weight of their words no longer bends reality in their favor. They speak, but the response they are used to does not come. They try to stand tall, but the ground beneath them feels unsteady. The world they built was never as firm as they believed, and now, as they reach out to grasp what once belonged to them, they find nothing but empty space. Like a tree that once stretched high, its branches covering the land in its shadow, they thought their reach was endless. They believed their roots ran too deep to be moved, their presence too great to be ignored. But seasons change. The storm has come. The winds have shifted, and the very ground they stood on is no longer theirs to claim. The leaves that once held their color now fall. The limbs that once stretched outward now tremble, and the towering presence they once carried begins to wither. They sense it now, though they will not speak it aloud. The authority they wore like armor has rusted. The influence they wielded like a sword has dulled. They see it in the eyes of those around them. Where there was once blind allegiance, there is now quiet observation. Where there was once unquestioning obedience, there is hesitation. The tide has turned, and they are not the ones controlling the waves anymore. They move through the world differently now, their footsteps not as heavy, their voices not as commanding. They once spoke, and rooms would fall silent. Now, their words land with no weight. They once dictated, and hands moved to obey. Now their commands hang in the air, ignored, unanswered, unnecessary. It is not defiance they face, it is irrelevance. The power they gripped so tightly has slipped from their hands like sand through an open palm. They remember what it felt like to be in control, to be the force that shaped the space around them. They try to reclaim it, to remind the world of who they were. But the world no longer looks to them for guidance. The people they once ruled with certainty now stand on their own, no longer bound by the spell of their authority. They search for the old rhythm, the old responses, the old influence, but it is not there. It is an unfamiliar feeling, this loss of grip. The weight of their name, once enough to shift the course of things, no longer carries the same gravity. The walls they built to keep themselves elevated are crumbling, not by force, but by time itself. They reach for the echoes of their past, hoping to find the power they once commanded, but there is nothing left to hold on to. The throne they sat upon was never made of stone. It was made of shifting sands, and the tide has finally come to wash it away. They do not understand how it happened. It was gradual at first, then sudden, like a light that flickers before it goes out completely. They still try to pretend, to walk in the ways of the past, to speak as if the world still belongs to them. But their words are met with silence. The foundation they stood on is no longer solid beneath their feet, and deep in their spirit, they know it is over. They will not announce it, will not admit it. Pride won't let them. But they feel it, deep down in the place they refuse to acknowledge. The weight of something greater than them pressing in, shifting the balance, moving them out of the way. The season has changed, and they are not part of the new thing that is rising. No matter how much they resist, no matter how tightly they try to hold on, they cannot change what has already been set in motion. The tree has shed its leaves, the storm has passed, and the land they once ruled is no longer theirs. The ones they overlooked, the ones they dismissed, the ones they counted out, they are the ones who stand now. And there is no place left for those who refuse to change with the tide. They try to repeat the motions that once worked effortlessly, expecting the same results, but something is different. The invisible force that once carried them, lifted them, cleared the way for them, is no longer at their back. They push forward, but nothing moves. They attempt to rally, but no one follows. The game they mastered is no longer being played, and they are left standing in the silence, confused, bewildered, disoriented. They do not understand how the balance shifted, how the power they once held so easily now evades them. But deep down, they know it is no accident, no mere coincidence. The season has changed. The old ways no longer hold. The influence they relied on has been withdrawn, not by human hands, but by something greater. And no matter how much they resist, no matter how hard they try to recreate what has already slipped away, they cannot reclaim it. The wind has shifted, the oil has run dry, and the light they once believed was theirs to command has moved on, illuminating something, someone, beyond their reach. And deep down, they know. They know they are witnessing something beyond their control, something they cannot stop, something they cannot reverse. They try to hold on to what was, but it is like trying to grasp water. It slips through, leaving only the memory of what used to be. There is no more certainty, no more assurance. The game they mastered no longer exists. The power they relied on has dissolved. And as they look around, searching for the dominance they once wielded, they realize it is no longer theirs to hold. The storm has passed, and only the deeply rooted remain standing. They reach for control, but their grasp finds only air. What was once firm beneath them now feels like shifting sand. The game they played so well has rewritten itself. The pieces they manipulated now refuse to move at their command. They know it, but they cannot say it. They feel it, but they cannot face it. The world has changed, and they no longer hold the pen. There is no undoing what has been set in motion. They can run, they can deny, they can attempt to rebuild what has already been dismantled. But they cannot stop it. The shift is permanent. The veil has lifted, the illusion shattered, and they are left standing in the ruins of what they thought was unbreakable. And now, as they look around, as they watch what they once controlled slip through their fingers, they finally understand. It was never theirs to hold. They were only placeholders, standing in the presence of something greater than themselves, something they never truly understood, and something they could never contain. Because when the light comes, it does not ask for permission. It does not knock. It does not wait. It simply arrives. And once it has come, there is no turning back. Their instincts whisper what their minds refuse to accept. The careful plans, the strategies meant to keep everything within their grip, are unraveling thread by thread. Their steps are uncertain now, their confidence shaken. They used to dictate the story, control the narrative, but now something greater has taken hold, and deep inside, they know it was never theirs to control in the first place. They tried to shape what was never meant to be confined. They tried to contain a presence that was always destined to expand beyond their reach. They spoke as if their words could change the outcome, as if their opinions could rewrite what was already set in motion. But truth is not rewritten with whispers. Power is not tamed with doubt. And what has been ordained cannot be overturned by mortal hands. The inevitable has arrived. The shift they once dismissed is now the reality they stand in. Their disbelief does not matter. Their resistance is meaningless. They have spent so long convincing themselves that they held authority, but now, as the ground moves beneath them, they realize they were never the architects of this moment. They were only spectators, standing at the edge of something greater than themselves. And now, there is no stopping it. There is no negotiating, no pleading, no turning back. The current has shifted, and those who once stood in dominance now find themselves at its mercy. The tables have turned, the balance has been restored, and they recognize it too late. The presence that unsettles them, the force they can't define, the reminder of all they failed to diminish. This is what you have become. The shift is permanent. Once they have felt the weight of your existence, there is no erasing it. They may posture, they may feign indifference, but their unease betrays them. The falter in their words, the hesitation in their steps, it all speaks louder than they ever could. There is no need for declarations. Reality itself bends in quiet acknowledgement. Now is the time to share God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube. You can contribute to His plan and be a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you exponentially, far beyond your expectations. Remember, His protection and blessing is on your every step and every donation. You become part of His divine plan. You are a strong, radiant being, unshakable as His mighty rock. Witness God's miracles, feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul, and illuminate the world with confidence and courage. Be blessed, and let the light of the Lord guide your path. What they once dismissed is now undeniable. The gravity of your being has reshaped the landscape, and they are merely drifting within it. This is not for the ordinary, not for those who cling to the illusion of comfort, but for those who have always known they were set apart, who have felt the friction of being too much, too knowing, too vast for the spaces they were placed in. You understand. You have never fit their mold, never followed their script. While others seek shelter in the familiar, you walk through the unknown, unafraid, unwavering. Let the world chase its own tail. That has never been your concern. The path is yours alone, forged not by acceptance, but by the refusal to shrink. Strength is not inherited, nor is it borrowed. It is cultivated through fire, through struggle, through the relentless defiance of limitation. The ones who learn to transmute hardship into wisdom, wounds into wisdom, these are the ones who rise beyond reach. If this speaks to something unshaken within you, perhaps it is time to find those who move with the same knowing. They once scoffed at what they could not understand, dismissing vision as folly and certainty as arrogance. They spoke as if their words could diminish the inevitable, as if their doubt had the power to reshape reality. But conviction is not swayed by ridicule, and belief does not waver for the unseeing. The very disbelief they wielded against you became the fuel that carried you higher. And now, where once there was laughter, there is silence. Where once there was doubt, there is quiet recognition. You did not need their validation to ascend. You only needed the fire that was already yours.